Hey guys, welcome back to the series where I interview inspirational young people that have really interesting and unconventional stories to share, that often come from different backgrounds to me and have completely different stories to me, so that you guys can hear from other people from different backgrounds and hopefully get inspired from their stories. In this episode, I have an amazing conversation with a girl called Propa. She is currently at university at King's College, but in the past she's had work experience from places like Accenture and KPMG. And the most interesting thing, which just blew my mind and is why I had to interview her, was that she homeschooled herself during her A-levels. And she's ended up at a university like King's College in London. So I just found her journey incredible. I wanted to know more, and we spoke about so many different things, from how she was so brave and just her mindset around taking the risks to homeschool herself, the different influences on that, one being a really supportive mum, and also just networking on platforms like LinkedIn. I just thought she was incredible because in the episode, my big takeaway was, if the options that you want aren't there, you can just create them most of the time, and that's exactly what she did. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the episode. I won't talk too much. Again, in the comments, let me know if you found the episode interesting. I'd love to hear your feedback, but for now, enjoy the episode. So, Proper, welcome to the channel. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you here. And yeah, I'm just really excited for the conversation. No, of course, yeah. But yeah, really excited for the conversation. And I guess we'll just start by, it'd be amazing if you could give a little intro to yourself, let my viewers know who you are, what you do, and yeah, that'd be great.
So my name is Propa Anwar. I've just finished my first year of social sciences at King's College London, and during my gap year I worked full-time at a school and at a charity whilst teaching myself A-levels just before. So I had a little bit of a strange journey to get to uni, but I think it was worth it because I'm really enjoying my degree now.
Yeah, that's amazing. Good to hear you're enjoying it too. But yeah, I guess just a quick side note, I'm really excited for this conversation because from what I already know of your story, similar to me, it's like an unconventional route to taking steps forward to your career, and that's kind of what I like to promote on my channel. So having this different sort of route that people will hopefully take advice and inspiration from, I just really hope it does inspire some people that are listening right now. So obviously, I think the initial thing to start with is, throughout your journey, you taught yourself your own A-levels, homeschooled yourself. I'd love to just hear about general experience with that. How did that come about? How did it go for you? It'd be great to hear some stuff.
So I think in this country, what tends to happen is when we choose our GCSEs at the age of, say, 14, 15, and we do our GCSEs when we're 16, we're almost put into this box and we're thought, we think that we have to choose our career at that age because then our A-levels determine what career we go on to do. So naturally at my school, I did the GCSEs that were on offer. And when it came to A-levels, I thought, there are other subjects I'm also more interested in, such as sociology or economics, neither of which were offered at school for GCSEs. So I was in a bit of a dilemma because I thought I could stay at school and do the slightly more conventional subjects, and I could do those, but I wouldn't be 100% interested in those, and I'd have to base my career off that for the rest of my life. Or I could take a little bit of a drastic decision and decide to do those subjects I'm most passionate about, even if that means leaving school. So in year 12, I actually continued at school because I didn't take that decision at the time. I thought I would just stay at school, I'll go to university. It's a big, risky decision, so I just chose to do it that way. But I realized that I wasn't being true to myself. I knew I wanted to do social sciences, but unless I did sociology or economics, for instance, then it wouldn't help me to get there. So then it was all possible due to my amazingly supportive mum who allowed me to leave school. And I decided that I would make full use of that time. So of course, teaching yourself A-levels is quite difficult, but I think it was really rewarding because it meant I could organize my time completely how I wanted to. So I didn't have a set timetable. So I had to make my own. So in that sense, it is a little bit of a difficult situation because you're having to discipline yourself. But I decided that I'd get a job, so I worked at Kew Boys School as a communications assistant. And because I was still working in a school, it was almost like I was still going to school. So I wasn't fully missing the school environment. I wasn't fully out of touch with seeing people either. And then I'd come home and teach myself, and it would go on like that. So I would say that homeschooling is not for everyone, because if you feel that you need an institution to give you a timetable, then it probably won't work. But if you feel like your institution's putting you into a box and you want to explore other stuff on the side, then I think it's a really underrated opportunity. So then I worked and did my A levels largely off YouTube, believe it or not. But I think YouTube's amazing. Your
I love
YouTube channel, I know,
that.
continue to inspire future generations of people that are looking to go into education otherwise. And I think YouTube's been a lifesaver, really. Economics A level, for instance, I went completely off a guy called Econ Plus Dal. Shout out to his YouTube. He was incredible. So yeah, I think one of the other things that really inspired me was I'm lucky to live on the outskirts of London. And given my amazing mum and I wanted to live with her throughout university, I decided I wanted to stay at home going to university. So I went to all the university open days, and because I wasn't in school, I didn't have to miss school to go to open days. So I could go to literally every open day at every university I wanted to potentially go to. And naturally, since I didn't have something like predicted grades, I would ask the future people at the uni, like, what are you looking for? And they were saying, since I don't have predicted grades, they'd put a lot of emphasis on my personal statement. So because I found out about that quite in advance, I spent months and months and months writing my personal statement. And then I used my job employers as my references for university. So I think that also helped. So it was a bit unconventional, but I think, as I was saying in your future forward video not long ago, that if you pursue something that you love, even if it's hard, you will get closer to getting there because you're going to dedicate ungodly hours to that cause. So I think at the end of the day, it is worth really pursuing what you love, because I found that in year 12, when I wasn't working full time, when I was studying at school, there was this situation where I was thinking, I'm not reaching my full potential. And that is, in my opinion, the most frustrating thing. When you feel like you don't have control over your life and you don't have control over your future, then, an institution is only going to support you for like so long. And then it's up to you to build your career and go forward. So that's when I thought that, if it's up to me to build my own career at the end of the day, then I should take support from the institution. But if there's a place where that stops, then my mum and I and some other uni people, we can work through the rest of it. So that's
Yeah, I love that you recognise that we are in control of our future, and you recognise that quite early. And I think that's where the system fails a lot. It's not really down to the people, but we're trained to think, well, school kind of just guides us through the rest of our life. And then people leave university and are stuck. And that's why so many graduates struggle to get jobs. But I'd love to go just right back to your initial decision. So it was really interesting how you did start year 12 and then kind of dropped out from there. So I love that you recognised that, yeah, you might have missed the opportunity, but there was still the chance there and you still took the decision. It was never too late.
I think the reason why I started year 12 was that I wanted to be sure that leaving school was the right thing to do, because I knew that if I started year 12, at least I was on this so-called safe path to getting to university with teacher references and all of that guidance. So unless I started year 12, I think I would have regretted the whole thing, and I probably wouldn't have had the maturity to, set out my own timetable. And given that you have to be 18 to get a job like the one that I was doing, if I didn't start year 12, then at that time I'd be homeschooling without an actual job. It would be a bit of a mess. So I think that was actually a foundation in a sense, because the methods that they were using to teach us those initial A levels I was doing, I used those methods to self-teach my A levels when I actually did them a year later. So I did them in a year later.
Yeah, and I think that shows it's clear as well that things work out. Things kind of happen for a reason. You started year 12 for a reason, and your experience of being homeschooled probably wouldn't have been the same if you didn't. But I'd be interested to know, what made you think, instead of doing conventional A levels because you weren't offered the courses that you liked, I'd be homeschooled Or why didn't you think about going to an alternative college or a different sixth form? Did that never cross your mind? Because I think that'd be my initial thought.
It did initially cross my mind, but
Yeah.
I was thinking that so the combination of subjects I wanted to do was, given the subjects on offer nationally relatively uncommon, like sociology, economics, psychology, I could have found a school to do that. But I was thinking, if I'm taking this huge decision at the end of year 12 before university, which is such a critical time, then I might as well like make this decision, do the full research, hit it head on, and take all the opportunities available to me at this age. And if I went to another school, I wouldn't know the unknown factors of that school that could have potentially affect me, such as, how their predicted grades work, for instance, or, there are so many different factors that would be out of my control. I wouldn't be able to gauge them immediately. Whereas if I took everything upon myself and my amazing mum, then what happens is that, okay, fine, it might not work out, but then we know that we had everything in our control and we tried our best. And that's the approach that I preferred. But it definitely wasn't an easy decision because there were two main things that I really loved about my school, and I still do. One is the music department because I'm a musician, and two is my friends. So that was a big kind of worry that I had at the time. If I'm leaving school at this really unusual time, you don't have prom, you don't have those kinds of, leaver service, you're missing out on those things. But luckily, my friends have been amazing. We're still in touch. We still meet up. That's all fine. And the other blessing I'd say is my German teacher, who has been quite a lifesaver, Frau Humphreys. I did my GCSE with her at school, and then year 12, I also did AS German with her. So, and then she left, and then I left as well. I couldn't really think of going to school when she's not there anyway. So she kept in touch with me even after I left school. And when the funny thing is, she moved to a different school to be head of German there. And when I became homeschooled, then because I had no timetable again, beauty of this is I went to visit her school on open day so I could still legally see her because I wasn't 18. So she was a huge source of inspiration as well. And my mum and the people at uni who I'd keep visiting and I'd, want to be in their position in a few years' time. So I think that kind of opportunity of looking ahead to university on a regular basis really helped me. Because when I was studying for my A levels, it wasn't just like I'm looking at these books and that's it. It was these books will lead on to hopefully one of these institutions. So I think that all of those things really helped.
Yeah, you clearly, when leaving, you weighed up the pros and cons. You sound like a strong person that can be quite easily disciplined, and I don't think I could do the same thing that you did. And it's amazing to hear.
I didn't think so either, but my mum was really supportive. And as I said, when you've got so many inspiring things around you, then it really makes you work harder. And that's why I thought that even though my school was great, it wasn't pushing me as much as I felt that I could have pursued my interests otherwise. For instance, because I'm a musician, I released my debut single as soon as I left school. But again, that wouldn't have been possible if I was in school because I wouldn't be able to record in the studio during the daytime, for example. So I just think that if you have lots of interests, then it's a viable option, and it's something that even I didn't consider until I was put in that situation. So, like, if someone told me during my GCSE times that they're homeschooled, I'd probably think, "Wow, like that's quite cool," but I don't think I'd do that, But when I got into that situation, it seemed like it made sense.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you think you made the right decision, and I can tell it's led you on to so many great things. And you mentioned leaving friends and the school that you liked, and there were a lot of different challenges along the way, but you had that support network of your mum. And were there any challenges? It sounded like you prepared for what you were going into quite well once you left school, and you kind of had almost like an action plan. You knew what your timetable would probably be. But were there any challenges that surprised you? And also be interested to know how much did that support network of your mum and maybe other people impact your experience and help you along the way?
Absolutely life-changing, because I can imagine, like, if I didn't have a supportive mum, then the whole thing would just not happen. I know that even for myself, I was a bit afraid at the beginning, thinking, will I actually leave school? And because it was a school that had a good reputation as well, I thought initially, like, if I leave, people think I, dropped out for the wrong reasons. So there were those initial fears, but then I thought, it's worth me using my mum's support and her support network. And LinkedIn also was a really great place to network. So when I started my first job, so this was at a charity called the Faith and Belief Forum for 3 months, and that was as soon as I turned 18. there was a lady there who was managing the internships, and she said, make a LinkedIn account. At the time, I thought, I've just turned 18 in a few days. Do I really need LinkedIn? But really, once I got on there and I used LinkedIn Learning, which is a platform where you can take like courses and certifications and things, and then that helped me expand my network as well. And then what happened was I eventually started reaching out to senior people who went to the universities that I wanted to go to for the subjects I was applying for. And I said, like, not just what A levels did you do because I'd chosen them by then, but what kind of things are they looking for on the personal statement? Not that I would copy and paste, but so that I can actually genuinely do those things and build my skills. So, there was a girl called Onyinye who is now doing a master's in education policy, which is in the same kind of department as my degree, social sciences. So her supervisor would end up being my kind of degree tutor as well. So I knew that if I understood from her how that works, then that would help me settle in as well. So talking to people like that through LinkedIn really helped because I understood the culture of different universities before going in and settling on one. And that's one thing that I think is really important. We always chase like university name over everything else when we apply. And that's something that I am not so keen on because at the time I had offers from UCL and King's, but I definitely wanted to go to King's because of the culture at King's. And also the assessment of the degree, I think it really suited me because there's no exams. Whereas in UCL, the exams are all at the end of the year and that wouldn't suit me. So it's not just about the uni name, in my opinion. It's like, again, what fits your criteria? What is going to be the best for you in the long run? And so again, when I firstly, when I was leaving school, people were saying, you should stay at school. And then when I got offers from King's and UCL, people saying you should go to UCL. But in both of those cases, I just did as much research as possible, made a decision and just stuck to it. And I haven't regretted either of those. So I think the main thing would be to have an open mind, do as much research as you can, network with people that you'd like to be like in a few years' time. Look up to them, like don't compete with them, but look up to them. And the more time you spend with those kinds of people, the more you'll learn from them and the more you'll model them and eventually be more like them. So I just think that helped a lot.
Yeah, definitely. I think I can relate to that a lot with my time at Google. Everyone, as soon as I joined, when I was asking for advice, they'd say, keep networking, keep doing what you're doing, talk to people. And it is quite hard at first because especially if you're in the environment and you don't have specific questions or a goal to ask, it's like, why am I talking to these people? I don't understand what I'm going to gain from this. But the more you do it and the more you figure out where you want to go, what you want to do, it's like you said, you talk to those people you look up to. You talk to those people that have had similar backgrounds to maybe what you want to go into, and you can learn so much from people. And I've tried to push that on my channel as well. I think networking with people is one of the best ways to learn.
Something that I actually saw on LinkedIn a couple of days ago is a girl who got a maths offer at Warwick, so incredibly talented, incredibly bright, and she just needed the funding to go to university, but it wasn't there. And she just put it out on LinkedIn saying, like, I need the funding to go to university, I have this place. Within days, Taylor Swift funded her. And I'm thinking, wow, like, it's just one example of the many examples out there where, as long as you put yourself out there in your network, then if your cause is good, then people do join you. And that gives me a lot of hope. Like, that's just one example I saw in the last couple of days. But really, it's really heartwarming to see, like, when these efforts get recognized.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I didn't know that either. I love that story. So I guess going off the back of networking, you said it obviously helped with your choice for university and getting to where you are today. But I know you've done a lot of work experience. You sort of mentioned it with the charity, and I've seen that you've worked at the likes or had work experience of Accenture, KPMG. I'd love to know, how did networking impact that? And also, is there anything significant worth mentioning that you think helped you got to those stages?
So networking definitely helped. I reached out so LinkedIn has this thing where you've got like first connection, second connection. So when I built up a network of people within my university, I made that a priority. And then what happened is I reached out to alumni of my university who worked in those companies. So I'd send very personalized messages to second connections of mine who would have been alumni from my university working at, say, KPMG, Accenture. And I'd message them saying, I'm a first year King student and I'm looking to work here. And, what kind of advice would you give me? And you'd be surprised, most of them actually responded really positively. And this was something I learned from the YouTube channel of Afsal Hussain, who is a content creator. He talks about like different careers and how to get there. And he was saying how if you send a personalized message to someone, it has a lot more value than just being like, click, 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 I want to be your friend. So messaging those people really helped. And the other thing that I really believe in is not letting your age be a barrier to anything that you want to achieve. So I'm one of the youngest in my year. So when I wanted to apply for the charity, the deadline for applications was a couple of days before my birthday, my 18th birthday. So I was sitting there really frustrated, like if only I was 2 days older, I could apply for this and maybe I could get it.
Yeah.
So what I did, it actually is a year before I started networking with them. So as soon as I left school at 17, I started networking with them. So I started singing for their events, raising money, and really becoming good friends with them. And then what happened is I called them up and I said, I'll be 18 in 2 days. Can I still apply? Because by the time I was to work, if I was to work there, then I would be 18. So I think just being a bit brave sometimes works as well. You know, there's no harm in reaching out to people, especially if you haven't crossed that age limit yet. It can actually work in your favor if people understand that you're so enthusiastic you want to get there. So I think both of those things worked in my favor. But unfortunately, both of my experiences at KPMG and Accenture are both online. So I haven't had that kind of
Okay.
full, office environment like I would have liked. But it's been really rewarding nonetheless. It's been quite similar to the experience I had doing an online course at UCL. So I'm still doing a bit at UCL, but that online course again was really rewarding. And I think that's also helping me focus on my degree as well, because it's like an academic thing on the side. So helping me to broaden my knowledge.
Yeah, and although they're online, they're still great achievements, great companies, and amazing things that employers will value in the future. Going back to when you said you were actually 17 when you were contacting this company, when you sort of networked with them, was your idea behind that to hopefully work with them in the future? Was that always your intention, or did it kind of happen naturally and then that's how the opportunity arose?
That was the intention, yes. So I would contact people from the companies that I was aiming for. So I would initially I would network with HR people, for instance, to understand the application process. But then it kind of branched out, as I said, into sending requests to Second Connection alumni with quite personalized letters saying, you know, I'd love to learn from you and I respect you this much. And I'd only obviously send it to people that I genuinely felt that way for. I wouldn't make it up and, you know, as I said, tick, 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 because that's not the purpose of networking. But really, those people I had a lot to learn from, and that's helped me to get here as well.
Yeah, definitely. And how did you even know about networking at that age? Did anyone inspire you? Because I'm trying to think back to when I was that old, and this is something that I've learned over time, being at people that I'm surrounded by at Google that think the same. But at school, I don't remember anyone thinking that way. No teachers would encourage you to do that. How did that come about for you?
So two things. One is my mum is always my biggest example. So she's a doctor, but also like a newsreader. So she has a bit of a media presence, and she likes to use that to do constructive things. So that's always inspired me. And the second thing is there's this really famous quote, which is like necessity is the mother of invention. So when I left school and it was necessary for me to start building my career in order to get somewhere, because imagine if those A levels didn't go to plan, there would be I'd have to do another year or something. It would be a bit crazy. So when I decided to leave school, I thought I need to do everything now to try and get on what people call on track. So then when I said necessity is the mother of invention, I meant that it was necessary for me to invent ways to network and get closer to those companies, because in a way leaving school made me further away from that, because if you're in school, you have this designated time for work experience and your teachers write your reference, and there's all of that kind of spoon feeding and guidance which you get in school, which I wasn't getting. So then it was necessary for me to find a way of doing that, and that led on to this almost addiction of trying to find other ways of doing things. But through that process, I made loads of amazing friends. So that's something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, and I bet it's built your character so much, and obviously you've achieved some of the things you have because of it today. How do you, obviously we've covered a lot of different things, school, work experience, and now university. How do you feel like you have the time to manage all this? Is there ever a point where you think it becomes too much, or it's hard to think about the future, it's hard to keep networking with these people and keep these relationships? Has there ever been a point where you just maybe feel a bit lost, a bit overwhelmed?
I guess at times it might feel like when you're networking with more and more people, because it's like your network multiplies rather than you have an addition. Over time, you might have to focus on a specific group of people or a specific company rather than at the age of 17, where I was looking literally everywhere to try and make a start. So at times, it does feel like there's too many options, too many people to be inspired from, in a sense, too many inspiring things around me, which necessarily isn't a bad thing, but at times it does feel like, what do I choose? Because there's all these inspiring things out there. So that I have felt at times. And then again, I just go back to what do I love? And if I go back to what do I love, then I'll find a way of doing that so I can focus on bringing in those inspirational people in that field and going towards what I love. So again, what I love is quite a wide category. So it's like you can say I love my degree, I love doing my music, I love doing the media stuff with my mum. But again, I'd say I've narrowed that down from what it was initially. So initially it was even more broad than that. But over time, I'm narrowing it slightly because otherwise I won't be able to focus in the future. So I definitely have found that, if you have loads of interests, it can become overwhelming. But eventually you decide, what are you going to prioritize out of what you love? And then you just hit that head on.
Yeah, and I think it's important to have those different aspects as well. You shouldn't have just one interest, because by diversifying your interests, you're spreading the risk and you're giving yourself other options and opportunities. But how do you manage your time just day to day whilst you were working from home, homeschooling? Obviously, that taught you a lot, and then I imagine you've carried that through a lot of work experience in university. What I guess maybe just top line tips of people watching. What are the best ways that you found help you work productively and keep things managed?
So one technique that I'm a huge fan of is the Pomodoro technique, where you work in bursts of 20 minutes. And I find that really helps, especially because, say, for instance, because I tutor a lot of students, if I have a half an hour gap between two students, then I might have a quick snack. But that remaining 20 minutes, I can use that to full on work something that I'm doing personally, like an academic goal or a music goal or something. So I really try and utilize more than before the time in between other things. And then if you add that up over time, it could be listening to a podcast, it could be reading a book, it could be, calling someone you haven't called in a while. It doesn't have to be serious, but just diversifying your day in terms of the number of activities you do just keeps your brain fresh, I think. And so in terms of timetabling, when I was working full time, that work would be the main block of time, and then I'd fit everything around that. So I'd tell my students, like on the weekends or after school or whenever. Currently, during lockdown, I'm teaching at a wide range of hours all through the holiday. But again, I've told them when uni starts and when school starts for them as well, that I'll move that to after school and the weekends. So it's mainly around educational work, and then everything else fits around that. So in holiday times, I might be working more on music projects that I can release throughout the year. So it kind of changes, but I would say that it's fitting things around the main thing, and then as much as you can fit around it, that's how much you can physically do, and you shouldn't go overboard because then you'll burn yourself out. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, it makes sense, and you're
And
clearly very
what I'd also,
dedicated.
sorry to interrupt, what
No,
I'd
go on.
also say is to try and immerse yourself in situations where you want to see yourself in a few years' time, even if that's a bit forceful. So, for example, when I was applying to King's and UCL, so a lot of UCL students, they tend to study in the nearby Waterstones on Gower Street. And so for studying myself for A levels, I could have just done that at home, but I would intentionally go and study in that Gower Street Waterstones next to UCL, because then not only would that motivate me to go to university like that, but I would also bump into people who are going to UCL and I could ask them face to face, like, how did you get here? What advice do you have for me? I'm homeschooling. So I think that same time could be used at home, that same time could be used in Waterstones. But just putting yourself and almost forcing yourself, sometimes going out of your comfort zone. I had to travel a lot to go to central London for pretty much no reason. But putting yourself in those kinds of situations, I think, helps you to get there. Just using LinkedIn, putting yourself in those positions and going to universities, potentially going to, you're doing your work at Google. So, I mean, if you visited places like that from a young age, that would help you. So that's what I mean.
That is so interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that from anyone. Obviously, it does remind me of the whole law of attraction thing. When you have a goal, you kind of act like you're already there. But in a literal sense like that, it's really clear. Like I love that.
It
Never
got to
thought
the
about it
point where the
before.
Gower Street Waterstone staff, they all know me now.
New.
So I would study in the same like spot where there's a nice sofa and a socket and stuff. And yeah, if I wasn't there, like the next day they'd ask me like, "Where were you yesterday?" And it was almost like I'm not going to school, but I've still got these people that kind of you become nicely acquainted to, and it feels like a community. So what I like to think of is in school I had one main community, and then when I left, I was blessed with all these other communities, which made up a massive community, but I hadn't lost my school community. So the way I see it is I left school, which was a medium-sized bubble, to gain the blessings of a much bigger.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, it was worth it.
Yeah, and it sounds like homeschooling, the stereotype, it could be quite isolating, but you clearly didn't let that happen. You pushed yourself out of your comfort zone and made those opportunities for you.
There wasn't
So,
anyone that I'd met that was homeschooled until I was homeschooled. And I still have only met one person who's been homeschooled ever, and that's my seminar tutor, Freya, who is teaching at university. And she was homeschooled, so she obviously feels very passionately about education as well. But before that, like, I hadn't met anyone who had been homeschooled. So it was just like, my mum, and that's it.
oh, that's nice though. Nice that you had her. So currently you're studying at university. Is there anything for students currently now at university? Anything you're doing like extracurricular? You said you tutor students, things that maybe intentionally, unintentionally, you're kind of preparing for your future after university.
So something interesting that I worked on this year was through the help of Freya, who I just mentioned. She's doing a funded PhD with the help of the Economic, Social and Research Council. And as part of that, we wrote a book. So myself and a few undergraduate students, we wrote a book about democratic practices in education and how at King's, I said we're doing no exams in this degree. So we're trying to do things differently. That's kind of like the motto of the book. And so we're exploring through that book how people from different perspectives see education and experience education. So during lockdown, like the first half of lockdown so far, that was like my main project. So even after uni had ended in kind of March, April, and I was handing things in, but then from April to about now, I would say, we were really focusing on that book. So that book really helped me with the process, because not only did we do research, data collection, it also got me. It also kept me working on my writing and my essays, so that I'm not out of touch with studies entirely, but it wasn't in a serious kind of way. Like, you're getting a mark for this, so I could be more open with my feelings. And we were doing international video calls, so that was really helping me as well, because I'm still in touch with other undergraduate students from around the world. So the book, I would say, has really helped me to build myself over the past year. I'm really excited for it to be published. So when it is, I'll let you know.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds really cool. And it sounds like it's important to have that creative outlet almost. And obviously, it's an important project and there's a lot of value to it. But it sounds like you really enjoyed doing it too and it taught you a
I
lot.
really agree about the creative outlet, because when I was age 17 and, really in this dilemma of what do I do, something that really helped me to let out my feelings was songwriting, because I'm a musician. So it started kind of when I was really tiny. I'd do poetry and I'd sing songs, and then over time it developed into I should write my own songs and let out my feelings that way. So that's how my debut single came about when I was 17, because I wrote a song and with my mum's help I released that. So I definitely agree about the creative outlet being an important thing. It's not music for everyone, I know some people who are really talented at art and all kinds of other things, but I think if you have one creative way of expressing yourself, then that really helps to cope with everything that we've discussed about.
Yeah, I think it's so important to have that time with just you and yourself and your thoughts, just to sit and think about nothing almost. I'm definitely, personally, I'm really interested in art, and it's something that I've tried to pick up whilst working from home again. Now I've got the time and the resources. So yeah, so I guess just to wrap up, what's next for you? Any plans? Obviously, you've got a bit of university left. Anything in the pipeline?
So my plans are to complete university the way I have been, which is to really enjoy myself and try and make the most of everything. And Honestly, since I'm just starting out second year and I still have so many interests, I haven't narrowed myself too much. So I can't say, this is exactly what I want to be. But I think that's the beauty of a broad interdisciplinary degree like the one I'm doing. I could focus on something that's quite sociology based or quite economics based. And my year two modules, I think, will help me fully decide exactly what I want to do. But I know that whatever I want to do, I'd like to do something that's heavily involving interactions with people because that's something I love. And that's about it in terms of what I know at the moment. So maybe in a few months' time, I'll be able to give a better answer to that question. But I'm really passionate about, things like access to education and all of that kind of stuff. So we'll see when we get there, I think, is the best answer.
Yeah. Sounds like a good route you're on anyway. You don't always have to have a lot of stuff planned. You've
Says
clearly
you.
done a lot already. So, yeah, I guess any last words or advice for maybe students before university, at university, to make the most of what they've got, maybe narrowing down interests or finding out what they want to do. And I guess also having that confidence to take risks like you did. How would someone go about doing maybe a similar sort of route to what you did?
So I think the easiest way of taking an unconventional route or to make a bold decision is to find someone that's done something similar or to find someone that is where you want to be and then just directly message them in a meaningful way. And that just starts so many positive relationships, I think, and reading really helps. So there's a book I would recommend. I think I have it near me actually. Yeah, this book. This book is great. It's called, not sponsored obviously, the A-Level Mindset. It's called 40 Activities for Transforming Student Commitment, Motivation and Productivity. So this is a book that I, again, came across in Waterstones just because I put myself in the situation of going to Waterstones. So I used to study in Waterstones in the education kind of section to surround myself with books about future education. And I was passing by that and I saw A-Level Mindset and I thought that's probably for me. So I think even if you're past A levels, even if you're doing university, that book has some really amazing tips about how to manage your time, how to do things meaningfully. So, for example, there's 40 things that they advise, but one thing they say in there is do a reflection of how many hours per week or per day are you actually working towards your goal. And if you compare that to like really successful people, they are spending a big number of hours towards their goal. So like how close are you to that? Because if you're not modeling that every week, every day, then your year is not going to go like that and you're not going to get to where you want to get to. So some of these things do sound obvious, but when you read it in a book that's written by these experts, it does kind of hammer it into your head. So I'd say reading really helped me, not just academic, but reading things like that. Watching YouTube videos, both academic and stuff like this. Like I mentioned Afzal Hussain earlier, who's been of great help. And just putting yourself in situations where I think you'll learn. Ali Abdal also has like a channel where he
I
talks
love
about
him. I've
he talks
recently
about
found him and I feel like he's changed my life.
yeah,
It's
like
crazy.
he's a big advocate for things like spaced repetition and having a productive study desk. All of these things they do add up
Mhm.
over time. And he ranked like first at Cambridge University, and that's not an accident. So hearing
Yeah.
people like him talk about these things, I think just putting yourself in situations where you'll learn, it just makes you learn. It's not a very good way of phrasing it, but you get what I'm trying to say.
No, yeah, it makes sense. It's really, really good advice. And I really hope that people listening to this have taken something from it because I think there's been so much value. And I can't get over how young you are and how wise you are and all the experiences you've had. It's really inspirational to be able to just have this conversation with you. So,
I think above all, it was because I had faith. So I'm quite a religious person, and what happened was I just trusted God's plan, and I was just like, if I stay with my mum and trust God's plan, like, what's the worst that can happen? I'll get somewhere, hopefully. So that somewhere has changed. It was in school, it was without school, and it was uni.
yeah.
I don't entirely know what's going to happen next, but again, I just trust God's plan, and hopefully something nice will happen.
Yeah, and sometimes you can have all these plans in place and want to do all these goals and things, but essentially, if you strip it back and just think, whatever happens, everything will work out, and whatever you believe in, whether that's religious or people around you or just certain, I guess, values, having that belief in just that the universe or something will work out and it will all be okay, I think is so important just to kind of ground yourself and calm the nerves.
Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, this is like my personal story. So for me, it was music. For someone else, it might be art. For me, it was religion.
Yeah.
For someone else, it might be, I don't know, meditation or something. There's all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I think that really helps.
Yeah, definitely. But thank you so much for coming on here. I'm so excited to edit this and upload it, and I just think it's going to be great. And it's been amazing to meet you. You're an amazing person. I'm sure you're going to go on to do great things, and you've done so well and achieved so much so far. So well done, and thank you so much for coming on my channel.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and I can now add you to the list of the inspirational people that I've met through LinkedIn.
Same for you, same for you.